I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our Saturday live question and answer class. Please feel free to put questions you may have about American English pronunciation, fluent speaking, any topics that will help you in the chat at any time. And at the start of class today, we're going to look at a technique I've been teaching lately in my videos, which is called backwards chaining. And I'm going to teach you how you can use this for fluency, for pronunciation, for practice. It's a great way to master pronunciation of words and fluency in sentences. And so let's get started. So what I mean by backwards chaining is basically that you're building from the back to the front and you're linking together or chaining the information and the speech to build your competency and fluency. So say, for example, I struggle with pronouncing the word thriftily. This is not an easy word to pronounce. It has some I sounds. It has a THR combination. So this might be something that you will wanted to practice specifically on the word. If I were going to do just pure backwards chaining on the word thriftily, I would build from the back of the word to the front. Here's how that sounds. I would say, I'll write it out for you, like thriftily. So I would even start maybe just with saying the E sound. So begin E, then do backwards chaining, E, Lee, and then do E, Lee, to Lee. So I'm working from the back, E, Lee, to Lee. Adding one more, E, Lee, iftily. So I'm breaking down the parts of the word thriftily. E, Lee, iftily. And finally, E, Lee, to Lee, iftily, thriftily. Thriftily. Okay, so for a word, working from the back makes sense in some cases. It also can make sense to build the word from the challenging parts of the word. That's typically how I'll teach it in a word like thriftily, where I can backwards chain from the back. I can also build from where I find the challenges. And so in thriftily, most people are going to find the challenges here with this THR. So I may want to build and backwards chain from the center. That would sound like saying if, riff, thrift. So I'm giving myself a lot of opportunity to practice going from where I need to get and combining those sounds, but reversing the order. Oftentimes, too often when we're practicing on a word, we just keep approaching it the same way. We start at the beginning of the word, we struggle, we have the same issues with it. When you approach it from the back and when you approach it from the problem sounds and work your way outwards, oftentimes you can overcome some of the bad habits or challenges that you faced when you were just approaching it the same way each time. Okay, for sentences, we have the same concept, and this is where it's very helpful for once I've mastered saying thriftily and I want to be able to use it in a sentence. For pronunciation, using backwards chaining will be super helpful. It also is helpful for rhythm and intonation. So let's practice it and then break down how that may help you with both of those goals. So I'm going to start with the final word in the sentence, thriftily. Then I'm going to add one word at a time, keep building and repeating. By the end, I'll have had much practice on the word thriftily, and I'll also have had the opportunity to put this in context, to say it in more and more longer and longer phrases, and to build the rhythm in as I go. Here's how that sounds. Thriftily, family thriftily, his family thriftily, for his family thriftily, shops for his family thriftily, he shops for his family thriftily. So you could hear how I backwards chained. I went from thriftily to family thriftily to his family thriftily, for his family thriftily, shops for his family thriftily, and finally starting at the beginning, he shops for his family thriftily. What this did for me pronunciation-wise is I had many repetitions on the challenging word thriftily. That's really good for practicing getting that motor patterning, having that come smoothly and easily. I also built in, and you may have heard, that the rhythm became more and more logical to my brain because the stressed word in this phrase is that final word thriftily. It's longer, it's the most important word. So some of these other words were a little bit reduced and faster as we chained and did backwards chaining from the final word. So for example, family thriftily. Family, I may find that I want to take too much time on that word if I'm not working from the back because it has 3 syllables, it's a longer word. But if I say he shops for his family thriftily, you can hear that just doesn't sound natural, it doesn't flow, the rhythm's not quite right. And when I built it from the back, I was able to get that rhythm. Notice that our for becomes more of a fur. In reduced speech, it's not an important word, so I don't need for his family, but rather for his family, for his family. We may drop that H, for his, or for his, for his. The H is optional in a word like his when it's unstressed in a sentence like this. And shops got a little bit more length and clarity because it is the verb, it is important. So all of our content words, shops, family, and thriftily, don't have any reductions, but our little words go by quickly and may be a little bit reduced. He shops for his family thriftily. So you can do this for words and for sentences that you're working on. I also have a number of videos here on the channel now for backwards chaining practice with shadowing, for looking at particularly challenging sounds, or looking at special intonation patterns like phrasal verbs and compound nouns. So do check those out here on the channel. And also in our courses on speechmodification.com, we go through and use backwards chaining often as one of our techniques for practicing for fluency, practicing for pronunciation, and for intonation and rhythm. So that's a bit of an explanation there on that topic. Do feel free to ask questions about that topic or whatever is on your mind today. This is a live question and answer class, so you can put your questions in the chat at any time. If you're watching this later on as a replay, leave me a comment with your question and I'll get back to you with a response. I may have already covered your topic in a video, or I can cover it in a future video. Okay, welcome. It's nice to see so many of you here today. I'm taking a look at your questions. So we have a question about the noun principles. So my principles tell me to do that. Principles has first syllable stress. Letter C says the S sound. So I'm going to mark that with stress, principles, and the final letter S says the Z sound. It sounds like principles. And notice how there's really not much vowel in this final syllable. We have a syllabic L there. Excuse me. I need to sneeze, but it's not coming. There may be a little bit of a schwa sound between the p and the ul, pull, principles, but I'm going as quickly as I can from p to ul, that dark L or that syllabic L at the end. This is the same as the word principles. This is the primary things, or we also use principal for the leader of a school, or the principal person, the main person. So these two sound the same, but this is but they have different meanings. So watch out for the spelling on those. But the pronunciation of those two are the same. Okay, great word. Thank you so much. Let's see what other questions and requests we have this morning. We have a question about sixths thrown. That's quite a tongue twister there. So I do have a video about sixth, and sixths. And when we throw in thrown, then we have to go to another TH sound. So again, this is a place where backwards chaining might be helpful. Let's try it just to show you. So basically, if I'm building this, I have the sounds are sixths thrown, And what I'll find is thrown is going to be stressed here. I may want to build the THR word first. So I would start by saying own, roan, throne. That's going to be separate, sixth throne. And then for sixths, I may want to build it from the front because I'm tacking on a lot of additional sounds at the end. So usually for the word sixths, I suggest to people starting with sick. That's the k, the first sounds, I and k, sick. Then add your S, six. Then add your TH, sixth. And then add your S back, sixths. So, ksts, a lot of sounds in a row. Fortunately, if I'm saying sixths, I can kind of cheat a little bit there with sixths, where I'm kind of stopping the air. This and the th go together a little bit. They're both continuing fricatives, so I'm just, after I stop for the sick, this can just kind of run together as one and then come back. So my tongue is behind my teeth, forward for the TH, and back again for this sound. And then you're probably just going to have a bit of a break before you move on to the TH of throne. Yeah, quite the challenging combination of sounds. Even native speakers will have to go slowly and carefully on a combination like that. So be patient if that's giving you challenges, because it's definitely tough. Okay, we have a question about the most common pronunciations of particular and particularly. So these are commonly mispronounced. So I wouldn't necessarily go with what you hear as the most common pronunciations. I would say some of the common mispronunciations are dropping this first R. Particularly, and sometimes some errors here with the R's and the L's. Let me give you a common correct way to say it that's a little bit easier. So the most correct is to say per, par, per. So the R can be more of an because it's not stressed. So per, tick, you, particularly. Okay, here's what I would recommend. Go with particularly, and particular. Try to keep this first R in there, although that is one place where you can cheat a little bit. If I say particular, no particular, that first R is a little bit optional, particular. You're just going to have more of an sound there. It's pretty rare in American English for us to leave out any R's, but in a word like this, you will often hear people, it's just difficult to put that first R in there, so they often don't. If you can put it in, then go with the particularly. For non-native speakers, making sure that you don't leave out the y sound in this for letter U, particularly. This can be a particularly, or particularly. So I'm not doing a great job of answering your question of what's the most common. You're going to hear all kinds of different variations here. I'll refer you to my video for particularly. And I would say going with the y rather than u, but try to keep all your R's, except that first R. If that drops out, don't stress about it too much. Yeah, definitely a useful word, a difficult one to pronounce, and one that you're going to hear lots of native speakers mispronouncing or pronouncing in different ways. So a little bit confusing on how to get guidance on that. Very good. Okay, we have a question about the word Saturday. So in American English, we'll flap this first T. It sounds just like I was saying the word sadder. I'm sadder than she is. Saturday. First syllable stress. So not a strong D here, but a flap, just like we would say in better or getting or sadder, Saturday. You can try backwards chaining on this one to see if it helps you build from the back. So day, day, Saturday, Saturday. Yeah. I do have a video for this particular word since it's a common word, and of course videos for all of the days of the week as well if there are others that you need help with. Thank you. That's a great request. Okay. We have a question, a follow-up on particular, that you've heard some people drop the lur, particularly. Yeah, that's probably another error that I hear, but I would try to keep the lur at the end as well. I think that one's a little even more important than the first R to sound correct. It sounds like an error to me, even though native speakers will make that error as well. Okay, we have a question about plagiarize and plagiarizing. So we have first syllable stress. Letter A says the A diphthong here sounds like the verb to play, plagiar. And then we have just the jur sound. I'll rewrite that with the j. So the GI kind of says the j like in jump, plagiarize. And then this AR just says an sound because it's unstressed. Play is our stressed syllable. And then we have our I diphthong. Plagiarize, plagiarizing. Yeah, very good. Thank you. I don't think I've covered that word before. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay. We have a question about the word lottery, whether or not there's a flap T. It's not flat T, but flap T with a P sound for that T in the middle of words. And in lottery, we do use the flap T because the first syllable is stressed, so that's a very common time that we would use the flap T when T is in the middle of words and it's followed by an unstressed syllable. So it sounds like lottery. Lottery. I feel like I won the lottery. Lottery. Similarly, like battery, cattery. I'm trying to think of other words with uri with a flap T. But yes, that does have a flap. Thanks for being here. Nice to see you. Thank you for also being a channel member, and I truly appreciate your support. Okay. We have a question about the word tsetse fly. So this is a kind of uncommon combination of sounds for English, but we just have basically tsetse, the ts. We use this TS combination in a word like pizza, pizza. That sounds like pizza. Same idea here, but just starting with a t sound. So it's less typical for English words to start with a t and a s sound, but it's basically just like it's written. First syllable stress. So tsetse. This one is shorter. Tsetse. Tsetse fly. So both E's say the E sound. I hope there's no tsetse flies in your pizza. Okay, great. Thank you for that request. We have a question from another channel member. Welcome. About the word whilst. So it's like the word while, which is actually more typical for modern language. In American English, we don't really say whilst anymore. You'll see it written. You maybe will hear it in British English, but we'll always use while. So first we'll talk about that one. It sounds like it has the I diphthong, and it sounds like while. And then if you're saying whilst, you just add this and the t to while. So while and whilst. Something you more commonly will see in writing old-fashioned writing. We don't use it. We don't use it in modern writing either in American English. Okay, great. We have a question about the word behavior. So this is an example of when we have second syllable stress, behavior, then our first letter E is not going to be an E, not behavior, but it's going to be reduced to an I, behavior. So same vowel that have in words like between or beside. BE, if it's unstressed at the start of words, typically sounds just like B at the start. Then we have our letter A says the A diphthong here. It's stressed. It's our long syllable. And then behavior. You can put the V here or here. Behavior. So second syllable stress. A. V. The I says the Y sound. And then letters OR just say not or. Behavior. Please be on your best behavior. Yeah, very good. I don't know if I've covered that word before either, and I think that's a helpful one. A little bit unusual with the spelling and sounds. So thank you for that request. Great. Okay, let's keep going. Question about how to achieve a natural American accent. What do my best students do? So my best students really just practice a lot. They focus on the areas that I help guide them to know which things stand out the most in their speech, and really using techniques like we talked about at the beginning of class with the backwards chaining, the shadowing, really kind of building up a lot of repetition on patterns so that they can say their new sounds easily and incorporate them in their everyday speech. They do a lot of focused practice and then a lot of listening and awareness practice, and they stick with it over time. So it's really something where just having patience, knowing that you're going to see some short-term gains, and then sometimes getting that natural sound just takes persistence over time. So the more you're speaking in English, listening in English, using a lot of opportunities to practice in the real world, those are the people that tend to be the most successful. So there's definitely, I think, getting some coaching, some one-on-one help and feedback is usually super helpful for people, but also utilizing my online courses, kind of walking you through stages and steps of practice, and giving you a lot of different resources. Those can be helpful as well. So you can check that out on our website on speechmodification.com. Thank you for that question. Okay, we have a question about the word procedure. So in procedure, we have another U that says has more than one sound. We have second syllable stress again, so letters PRO are going to say pr at the start, unlike a word like program where the PRO says pro, or progress where the PRO says pra. When it's unstressed, letters PRO are going to say the schwa sound, so it sounds like pr. You can think about it as being very short. Letter C says the S sound in this word. It's stressed. Letter E says E. And then DU is going to say the J sound plus an So think about it like procedure. He had a procedure last week. What's the procedure for working on my pronunciation? Very good. Excellent word. Thank you. All right. We have a question about the word castigate. Suggestions about how to use it. So I'll talk about how to pronounce it. So to castigate has first syllable stress. Letter A says the A sound. We're going to have a schwa or an I unstressed second syllable there. And then secondary stress on the gate. The letter E, so it makes the A say its name. So think about it like castigate. Yeah, castigate. Very good. Thank you for that request. It's nice to see so many channel members here this morning. Thank you so much for those of you who have joined as channel members. And we'll be having more sneak preview videos for you, as well as covering your requests in an expedited fashion. It's also great to see you here in the live class. So thank you for your support. Okay, wonderful suggestions and questions today. I'll stay on for another minute or two in case any other chats come in, but take a look at the beginning of the class today where we talked about that backwards chaining. There are a number of videos now, newer videos on the channel, showing you some tips and techniques, the basics on backwards chaining, and then applying that in a lot of different contexts. And so that's a series that you can start in on, and you can use it to apply. You can apply that to a number of different ways of practicing whatever you're working on, whether it's pronunciation or fluency or intonation. I also have on our podcast playlist a lot of shadowing practice using that backwards chaining. So check out those podcast videos here on the channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Those are designed for being a little bit longer video with a lot of shadowing practice where you can listen and repeat and really implement some of the things we talk about in our shorter videos. So I hope that you'll check those out. Okay, we have a question about the word suggestion. Another good one. I do have some videos for this word. Second syllable stress. So we have two G's saying two different sounds here. So we have in the first G says the sug with the g sound, but it's unreleased. And then the second G starts the stress syllable, and that one is a j sound, like in jump. And then we have a suggestion. We have the ch sound for the letters TI. So writing that out in alternative spelling, think about it like suggestion or chin, suggestion. So just an unstressed last syllable there with a reduced vowel, suggestion. That was a good suggestion. Thank you so much. Okay, yes, so I do have a video for that. We have a question about chime in and bump into. So some examples of how to use that. So thank you for chiming in with that. So to chime in is to voice your opinion or to add on to something else that someone else is saying. So let me just chime in. I'm going to add X, Y, and Z. Usually it's a way of saying I want to add something. It may be the same. I might be agreeing or disagreeing, but I'm going to give my opinion or add my information. I might say to you, oh, can you please chime in if you have more questions about that? So asking or requesting or suggesting that we use it. And then bump into, we usually use to mean another way we say that is run into. And usually that just means I met someone, but it's not intentional. So I might bump into you at the coffee shop and say, oh, hi, I didn't know you were going to be here. Or I might say, oh, I bumped into so-and-so last week, just meaning that you met, but it wasn't intentional. So you ran into them or you bumped into them usually means having had an encounter and met. We also use these two for literally hitting someone. So be careful not to bump into the bushes when you're backing out with your car. Or I ran into the intersection, or I ran into a parking meter when I was parking. So bump into or run into, literal meaning, and figurative meaning is more encountered someone. Yeah, great ideas. Follow up on suggestion. Can you drop the first g sound and just say suggestion? People do that, but I don't recommend it. It's not a very strong g. I'm not saying suggestion because it's unreleased. Suggestion. But even though it is, I think, probably in the dictionary now, because native speakers will say, I have a suggestion instead of suggestion. Yeah, so it's okay if it's difficult for you to put that g in, but I recommend trying to use that stop G as well as the j sound in suggestion. Okay, wonderful. Lots of great questions today. Really good topics. Thank you so much for being a part of class, for coming back, asking your questions. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you are watching this later on, you can always leave your questions and suggestions in the comments, and I'll follow up with you there on those. I'll be back tomorrow with a special Sunday video. On Wednesday, we'll have our Word Wednesday, and on Friday, we'll have our Fluency Friday. And I'll be back next week with another live class. Thanks so much for being a part of class today, and I look forward to seeing you in our next live class next week. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Thanks for a great class.